join me in a prayer. God, may the words of our mouths, the meditations of all our hearts, may they be acceptable to you, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. I've struggled with this idea of clocks in the sanctuary for many years. Do we really need to know the exact time while being in the presence of God? Perhaps the person at the pulpit, whoever's leading worship, perhaps they should know what time it is. But in many places around the world, of course, congregations don't care what time it is. In China, worship services can go on for hours and hours, as well as churches in India and I imagine some other countries. People travel long distances just to get to church in some areas, many of them setting out before the sun is up. And after such a journey, people want a robust, lengthy sermon. Anything less than an hour and a half, I know for some countries, they feel cheated. So suffice to say that this is not the way it works in many Protestant churches in America. If I did that, you would probably not be thrilled with me. But I recall hearing years ago about a preacher who is admiringly regarded for always finishing his services right at noon. Then one Sunday, the impossible happened. He preached until 12:30. On the way out, one of his elders angrily inquired, "What happened to you?" The preacher answered, "For years I have always put a candy mint in my mouth as the service started, and I would tuck it away. It was always gone exactly at noon. That way I never had to look at a clock and worry about what time it was. But this Sunday, it didn't go away, and I finally realized I'd put a button in my mouth instead." Preachers are not the only ones who have to keep track of time. We all do. There are deadlines to meet, buses to catch, appointments to get to, papers to be turned in. But we can't let clocks hold us captive either. Calendars and clocks have become masters in our modern society, masters often over Jesus. In his book, Time Wars, Jeremy Rifkin writes that the idea of our lives and the events in them being controlled by the blocks of allocated time is, in terms of centuries at least, a relatively new idea. The idea comes from the Benedictine monks, whose passion for the organizing and filling every minute of the day grew out of St. Benedict's conviction that idleness is the enemy of the soul. Not until the 15th century did clocks begin to rival churches in the town squares of Europe. Not until the 17th century did those clocks have minute hands. Surely much has been gained in terms of production and organization. But when life became divided and subdivided into seconds and minutes and hours, many things were getting lost. And we experience those losses every day. Our distance from natural rhythms of life keeps increasing. Hardly anything is really seasonal. You can get tomatoes, which were traditionally a summer fruit, most luscious now any time of year. And we get fruits and vegetables from all over the place. They're not seasonal anymore. We also live in an increasing distance from this ancient but timeless understanding that each day, each moment is an unearned gift from our gracious God. rather than a commodity to be traded or spent on something else. So I think as the new year begins, I think it is time to rethink how we think of time. There's an ancient teacher of wisdom, which then gets translated into Greek, of Ecclesiastes. This wise person understood time quite differently from the way it is understood today. He wrote after the Babylonian exile, an experience that had taught the Hebrew people that human experience was never going to be an uninterrupted walk in the park, and that time should not be a tyrant that demanded all of our allegiance. Some see the Ecclesiastes as an ultimate cynic. There is some, perhaps, truth to that. 38 times throughout the course of the book entitled Ecclesiastes, this wisdom writer says, all is vanity. I would call him more of perhaps a realist than a cynic, a practical theologian who refused to look at life through rose-colored glasses and wanted those to whom he spoke not to wear rose-colored glasses themselves either. So today's reading catalogs various seasons of life. 28 of them arranged in sharp contrast to one another, and yet each an undeniable part of human existence. I think his list rings true. It begins with what is most fundamentally true, that one day we are born into this world. Then just as inevitably, our life in this world comes to an end. The French composer Hector Berlioz once remarked, "Time is a great teacher. Unfortunately, it kills all its pupils." Ecclesiastes would have agreed, though he might have objected to the adverb "unfortunately." For him, things are the way they are, set in motion by God. The universe unfolds according to its own inner logic and set of seasons. Only God knows why existence is set up the way it is. In the face of an inscrutable world created by an inscrutable God, one should not waste energy railing against life. Instead, it is advised the best thing to do is to be happy and enjoy yourself for as long as you can. That is the theological advice at its practical best. Since there are so many things over which we have no control, it's wise to be happy, to look for joy. In addition to not worrying about what we can't control and enjoying the gifts God gives. Ecclesiastes' other prescription for life is that always and forever we are to stand in awe before God, from whose mighty acts nothing can be added or taken away. God is the creator of time. God sets the rhythm of reality, the time to mourn, the time to dance, the time to gather in, the time to let go. Knowing what time it is it differentiates the foolish from the wise. Some hold on to dear life or to that which is actually finished and done. Some refuse to let go of a relationship that has ceased to be nourishing. Others try to breathe life into, say, a program at work or a program at church that has been around too long, but no one wants it to be buried. I know someone who started a new church. The church came to life because another church died. This other church set aside money for a new ministry to begin. These things can happen. But there's a time to build up, a time to break down, a time to be born, a time to die. Though the wisdom writer maintains there will be hatred and war in this world, don't think for a minute that he is condoning either. He is simply stating a fact, I think. Let us not forget that Christ came into the world covering up with hatred and war, with injury and mourning. He came to show us the way to higher ground. He gives us directions to the peaceful kingdom, which God originally intended and which has come to restore for everyone. The kingdom of God is at hand, Jesus announces. He came to defeat all the world, separate us from God and even from one another. Anytime you and I sanction hatred in God's name, we are doing so in a way that is entirely antithetical of our faith tradition. And I shudder when I hear some hateful rhetoric that permeates the public conversation in our nation. Let us never sigh and say, well, that's just how things are. If there's ever where a time to kill, now is a time to kill incivility and replace it with civility. If there ever were a time to sow seeds of reason, the time is now. We need to know what time it is. Jesus said, love your enemies. Do good to those who persecute you. This is the time now. This is the time in our society not to answer evil with evil, ugliness with ugliness. This is the time for reconciling love, the love of God to be released into the atmosphere through you and I. When Jesus began his ministry in Galilee, he said, the time is fulfilled. When we hear the proclamation today, another now is created. And now is the moment of our salvation. This very moment rich with divine possibility. Here we are, I think, on the frontier between an old order and a new order, where Jesus reigns. In the 20th century, Karl Barth called his age the time of great positive possibility. That is equally true right now, I think. And January 2017 is filled, overflowing with great divine possibility. No, the past is not completely finished and gone, but truly new has come. Jesus knew all there was to know about time. He knew when his time had come to give his life. He knew to whom to trust with his life, with his own coming and going. And ringing in my ears for weeks, especially on this sermon, was the verse from O Little Town of Bethlehem. Yet in the dark street shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears for all the years are met in thee tonight. Christ is the turning point of history. And so I close with this ancient story told by the wonderful author Joan I never pronounced her last name correctly. Chitzler. I could be incorrect. Where shall I look for enlightenment? The disciple asked. Here, the wise one said. When will it happen? The disciple asked. It is happening right now, the wise one answered. Then why don't I experience it? Because you don't look. What should I look for? Nothing, just look. Look for what? At anything your eyes light on. But must I look in a special way? No, the ordinary way will do. But don't I always look the ordinary way? No, you don't. But why ever not? Because to look you must be here, and you are mostly somewhere else. Friends, this is the wisdom of the ages. From everything there is a season, a time, a purpose under heaven. Yesterday is but a memory, but tomorrow it's a vision, it's a dream. But today, well lived makes every yesterday a memory of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. So let us be those visions of hope for others. Let this be so.